Chapter 16, Joe Lame. Dexterity check! A rubber fish flew across the room, aimed right at the pirate, who stumbled backwards awkwardly as the fish bounced off his head. Dexterity check! Fail! The crowd roared. It was Quest Club's special game day, and Superguy was in the back room of the last grenadier among the now familiar mob of misshapen adults and acne-ridden high schoolers. He scanned the room, shaking his head. Using the standard Dungeons & Dragons ability score scale of 3 to 18, he assessed what the average score of the group would be. Strength, 8. Intelligence, 14. Wisdom, 10. Dexterity, 7. Constitution, 7. Charisma, 5. The pirate, dressed in full regalia, eye patch and all, loomed massively over the table. Dex check! Another rubber fish flew, but this time the pirate swatted it aside, deflecting it deftly from his face. Success! The room erupted. Arr! The pirate yelled. Arr! The room roared in response. Superguy looked across the table. Brett and Charles were in their element. They were right at home among the nose-mumbling, schnur-talking, bray-laughing nerds. That's when he noticed someone at the next table over. A young, fit guy with a goatee and clothes that actually had some style. He looked normal. He looked cool. The pirate went on to explain how the day would work. We've got 4 sections. Downstairs, we've got Paranoia, Crimson Cutlass, and Dragonlance. And up here, we've got good old-fashioned D&D. Okay, me hearties, let's do this. Arr! Arr! The group split up and started to disperse. We definitely want Crimson Cutlass, Brett said, grabbing them both. Yup, Charles agreed. No doubt at all. Superguy followed them down the steps into the basement, catching whiffs of B.O. and Mountain Dew from the crowd. Brett and Charles hurried to the Crimson Cutlass table, but as they did, Superguy noticed that the guy with the goatee was sitting at the table over to the left. Without a word, Superguy stopped following Charles and Brett and drifted to the other table. They didn't even notice until they'd taken their seats and looked around. Charles gave Superguy a puzzled look, and Superguy just answered with a quick wave and looked away. He sat down right next to the goatee guy. Hi, I'm Superguy. Charisma check. Superguy, that's your name? Nice. I'm Joe. Charisma check. Successful. Joe had a zippy, almost nasal voice that was infectious. They were at the Paranoia table, which was a bizarre science fiction game. The entire rest of the table were high school kids, so Joe and Superguy quickly emerged as the leaders, setting the tone for the group. They spent the next 4 hours deep in an adventure, dodging laser grids, hacking security computers, and battling robots. Before Superguy realized what time it was, Charles and Brett sat down behind them to watch the conclusion of the game. Joe greeted them both warmly as they sat, which took Superguy by complete surprise. You guys know each other? Superguy asked. Yeah, from previous games, Joe answered. Joe's a blast, Brett agreed. Oh yeah, Charles said. Joe Lame, great gamer, great guy, big time. The game ended in a chaotic battle against alien slug creatures that was a riot. After the conclusion, they all thanked the game master and collected their stuff. Oh, hey, Joe zinged at Charles. We're going to have a happy hour at our house next weekend. Happy hour? Charles replied, nodding enthusiastically. You betcha. Sounds great, great, great. You guys should all come, Joe nodded. I'll call and give you the details. And bring your super guy. Charisma check. Nailed. Later that week, Superguy came home to find there was a message on their machine. Hey, freaks, it's Joe. Wanted to give you details about the happy hour this week. You all better be there. Superguy took down the information and then deleted the message. Stealth check. Successful. Joe's house turned out to be just a few blocks away. Superguy slipped out to the happy hour while Charles and Brett were on a run to get some dinner. Joe's house was awesome, unexpectedly awesome, creatively awesome. Joe's girlfriend had a wild sense of style and had decorated the place with a bizarre combination of 50s kitsch and goth macabre. There were brightly colored retro appliances in the kitchen and sculptures of dismembered dolls with devil horns in the living room. The place was packed with all kinds of artsy, stylish people. Knit caps, tight black t-shirts, cigarette smoke, slip dresses, flannels. Average ability scores: strength 12, intelligence 15, wisdom 15, dexterity 11, constitution 12, charisma 14. Hell yes. Joe approached and handed Superguy a bright blue cocktail in a classic martini glass. "Midwife Manhattan. One of my housemates made them. Where are Charles and Brett?" "Oh, they couldn't come," Superguy replied, feeling just a tinge of guilt. "Those losers," Joe zinged loudly. Joe's house was a single-story home, but was deceptively large. There were 2 living rooms, 3 patios, and 5 bedrooms, so the party was spread out everywhere. Superguy felt like he kept discovering new little gatherings as he moved through the place. It turned out Joe had a bunch of housemates. It was the most incredible array of people: 2 screenwriters, a graphic designer, and to Superguy's shock, Marcus, the unfunny comedian. "You live here?" Superguy asked, stunned. Yeah, Marcus smirked. Superguy had a great time wandering from room to room, conversation to conversation, and he was totally on. He debated Academy Award nominations in the kitchen, smoked a cigarette and talked about the restaurant business on a side patio, got into a drinking game in the living room. He eventually wandered to the back of the house, opened a door, and found a whole backyard with bright fabric overhead and colored lights. It smelled like weed and sagebrush. He felt like he had discovered an entirely different party. He spotted Joe in a small group and walked over. That's when he spotted Katie. Charisma 17. She had a bob haircut and a polka dot Betty Boop dress. She looked like a pinup cigarette girl from the 20s. Superguy joined the conversation but purposely didn't look at her. He knew the deal. Guys stared at this girl constantly, so he would do the opposite. He focused on Joe as they all bantered. The group all worked in the industry: sound guys, camera guys. They were swapping outrageous stories from jobs they'd worked on. One of the sound guys was talking about a crazy crowd scene he had to do for a budget zombie flick. Then Katie jumped in. "I was costume assistant for Xena the Warrior Princess and had a huge Amazon army scene," Katie bubbled. "I spent all day taping boobs together." Then she grabbed her own breasts in both hands. "Together and lift," she laughed. Charisma check. Successful. That next week, Superguy came home to find a new message from Joe on the machine. "Okay, so this is crazy," Joe's peppy voice piped out as Superguy listened with a feeling bordering on triumph. "There's this photographer staying with us this week, and this guy is traveling around the country taking pictures of people in front of famous landmarks, but the people are naked. He wants to shoot in front of the Man Chinese Theater next Saturday and needs people to do it. So let me know if any of you freaks want to get naked." Superguy called Joe right away and said he was in. He also told Joe that he had asked had asked Charles and Brett, and they'd both said no. Then he hung up, went over to the answer machine, and deleted the message. Stealth check successful. That Saturday morning, Superguy slipped out and went to Joe's. He arrived to find it was himself, Joe, a girl named Peg, charisma 13, and Katie. Luck check successful. The photographer was a guy from Michigan with a soft voice and a ponytail. He had this naked photo thing down to a science. The concept was to make everything look natural, and they had to practice in the backyard before they went to the Man Theater. 1. Girls step out of shoes, guys slip off shoes and take off shirts. 2. Guys slide off shirts, girls pull dresses off. 3. Set all clothes in a pile, step away, and pose for photo. Done. Slip on clothes, shoes, walk away. No rapid movements, no running, nice and easy. People around usually didn't notice a thing. Again and again they practiced, and each time they did, Superguy's chest seemed to swell more and more. He was euphoric. He was flying. He was in a backyard in L.A. with an avant-garde photographer rehearsing taking his clothes off with 3 other super cool people, 2 of them hot girls. This was what he dreamed about. This was the madness he wanted to be part of. These were the people. This was the L.A. After an hour of practicing, they got into 2 cars and drove out of the valley. Superguy's heart was pounding the whole ride. He and Joe talked in nervous spurts. Once there, they got out and loitered while the photographer set up and waited for the cops in a nearby shop to move along. Then they were going. One. It was over before he even knew what happened. Superguy was naked in a flood of tourists, and by the time anyone noticed, they were all pulling on their clothes and piling into the cars. Superguy hooted and screamed as the car drove off. They all did, piled on top of each other. "We need to go get a drink right away," Joe crowed. "And no one is allowed to put on underwear," Superguy roared. That Sunday night, Brett and Charles came in. Superguy was playing Blades of Steel. "We heard all about your naked adventures from Joe," Charles laughed. "Oh, right," Superguy responded. "Why didn't you let us know?" Brett asked. "I totally would have wanted to do that." Yeah, sorry," Superguy responded. "I guess it came together pretty fast." It had been a frustrating afternoon. Superguy's brakes were making an awful noise, and it turned out to be almost $300 of work. He'd been at the garage for hours, and when he finally got home, strength, 7, intelligence, 12, wisdom, 8, dexterity, 8, constitution, 8, charisma, 5. Quest Club happy hour. He had totally forgotten. The entire living room was taken up by a circle of dorks sitting on the floor. Magic, the Gathering, and endless plumber butt. There wasn't even any music going, just nerds calling out their card plays. Superguy stepped carefully through and into the kitchen. A mob was there surrounding the table. Superguy! Charles was dressed in a black vest and a bolo tie, and he had a whole setup of bottles and glasses. Charles had been taking a bartending class on Tuesday nights. "I've got the Divine Smite, the Eldritch Invocation, and the Barbarian's Rage. All delicious, sort of, all very strong. What's your poison? What'll it be?" Charles was in high gear, juking and jerking as he hopped from ice to mixer to ice to glass to pouring. He bounced back and forth around the kitchen in a frenetic blur of overenthusiasm. Then, from across the kitchen, a voice zinged out. "I'll take another Eldritch Invocation." Stealth check. Fail. It was Joe. Superguy had told Charles and Brett that he would invite Joe, but he most certainly had not. Somehow Joe had still heard about the party anyways. "No problem, Joe," Charles gushed. "No problem at all, but it's an invocation, not an evocation." "That's another school of magic entirely," chimed in a random nerd. Superguy about died. This was not the setting he wanted to be seen in. He wanted to be at Joe's place, not the other way around. He knocked back his drink in one gulp. "Hi, Superguy," came a female voice. It couldn't be. But it was. Luck check. Surprise check. Fail. It was Katie. She wore a black cocktail dress with a pink scarf on her long neck. She had black lipstick and a lace garter on her thigh. Superguy stammered hello as Katie picked up Charles's bartender's guide. "My test is in 2 weeks," Charles chirped. "Oh, yeah, I'm nervous, but I'm studying. You bet I am. Yup. You want me to quiz you?" she asked. "Go for it," Charles said. "I need to be better for sure. Quiz away." She laughed and leaned into Charles as she began to quiz him on drinks. Superguy snatched up 2 cocktails, one in each hand, and drifted out to the front porch. A mob of dorks were now in the front yard, dueling with foam weapons. Could it get any worse? Superguy drank both his drinks and then snatched up another drink that one of the nerd warriors had set down. Discouraged and cranky, he stood up from the front porch steps. Constitution check. Fail. He wobbled to the front door, weaving as he walked. Then he stumbled through the crowd of dorks and made his way to the back porch. Katie and Joe were back there chatting on the couch. Superguy tried to turn around, but ended up stumbling down the steps into the dryer. A pile of Charles's clothes was pristinely folded on top. "Oh, right. Let me just fold this. Yup, Superguy called out. And this one, and one more, of course. Yes, I will." He quickly pulled 1, 2, 3 of Charles's T-shirts on over himself. "Hi there, I'm Charles Galapagos, and I'm happy to see you there. Yes, I am. You betcha. Yup. He rushed to Joe and Katie, shaking their hands frenetically and pacing forward and backward as he did. The two of them burst into laughter. And then Superguy was off to the races. Mimicking Charles's voice and movements, he hopped all around the back porch. Have to do laundry. Yup, yup. Oh, and have you tried my new cocktail, the Soapy Sorcerer? You're going to love it. Hang on, hang on. He ran inside and rushed back out in a clatter of barware, vodka, and a full bottle of dish soap. He grabbed up all of Charles's clean laundry, swept it into the washing machine, squirted a third of the dish soap in, and started the machine. Then he poured a shot of dish soap and a shot of vodka and sucked them both down. The washing machine started making a groaning noise, and suds started flowing out of the lid, so he opened it and added another long, soapy squirt. Yup, 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 no problem at all. Doing laundry and need quarters, gotta get more quarters. He rushed madly to the sofa, sweeping the hysterical Katie and Joe off so he could root through the cushions. That's right, I'm Charles Galapagos. I'll take a cherry Coke hair gel treatment if you please, and don't mind that noise from the machine. I'll take my clothes extra spiffy-diffy-doo. Superguy hopped and jerked about, mocking Charles to the crowd that had gathered. And that's when the washing machine exploded.